So can everybody see both myself and Geshe? Oh, I think we're not spotlit. I think.
Oh, I can do that. That's my doing.
Oh, okay. I just want to. It's only so I can make sure that you guys can see Geshe. And can everyone see us now?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And can you hear Geshe as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, and yeah, and we can stream this, of course. Words of my perfect teacher. Losogi. So we'll get started. So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. Geshe hopes that you're well, and he hopes that all of your minds are improving and improving. Yeah, so whether that's the case or not, not sure, but ideally. And so we're gathered together today to engage in activities which bring benefit, right? Benefit not only to this lifetime alone, but also benefit to future lifetimes. We want to make sure that this is an activity that benefits ourselves from the point of this lifetime and of future lifetimes, and also benefits not only ourselves, but also contributes to the benefit of others. And so if we look at it, right, from the correct point of view, then we'll see that actually the activities that we're engaging in right now, these are something that is very kind of important and significant. It's a significant moment in our life. And similarly, this human rebirth that we possess now, this didn't just arise without causes or from a few causes. It's hundreds and thousands of previously accumulated virtuous causes that allowed us to have this human form. That's also important to recollect. And really think about our good fortune in the context of these times. Because when we look around in the world with all the wars and all of the suffering that's going on, how fortunate we are to have conditions to practice. And also when we think about those people, not to see them as something far away, they're human beings like us. They want and deserve happiness. But because of the difficult conditions they endure, they're not able to experience or work towards that happiness. So as we embark on the teaching today, then thinking about all this, we should see that actually participating today is one of the best opportunities we have to be able to achieve a real and lasting happiness. So when we look at it from the outer point of view, we have the conditions necessary to practice. When we look at it from the inner point of view, we have the potential of the inner qualities that we want to develop. And when we think about it in that way, we'll see that actually the results really depend on our own endeavor.
미사치 drug 여러마도 다 kumban라고도 다 사야도 퇴야도 다 대지 가침보도 하스 가침보 이도 이래야 된 대지 샤시우르지고 걸어서 그게 다 다한도 야레스.
Yeah. So, of course, we also need to take care of our necessities of life. We need to make sure that we have enough to eat and drink and a suitable dwelling where we can live. But if we don't move beyond those concerns, the way that we live our life is not that different from the birds or the deers or the other beings in the animal realm.
다 뇨담기비 돈에 걸어서 가쿠와 대진이 요선도 야르 걸어보게서도 강가 다 보자르겠다 본다고 야레스.
They, the birds and the deer, sorry, I said deers. It's like deer is the plural. I keep forgetting that. So the birds and the deer, they're perfectly capable, right, of arranging a nice nest or somewhere soft for them and their children to dwell, of securing food and so forth. They can engage in all of those activities, right?
다 몸버지가는 예를 내가 maybe 돈에 걸어서 다 바니 저거도 왔어.
And many of the birds and the deer, for example, they are not consuming flesh, so they're able to live their lives in a way that is of relatively little harm to others.
다 내서 몸버지라 때문에 고가 첨보임바 고가 다 고가 야보도 주니 다 소소가 만다와지 저거 요바도 다 땜보 그거 야레스.
So, reflecting on all of this and seeing the unique opportunity that we have and how rare that opportunity is, we want to protect that opportunity and really try to use it and put our energy into achieving something of meaning from that.
다 던지고 다 보게 샤와 야보도 발라 리도세 샤와지도 레레지도 다 보게 야보지 그거든스.
And in order to be able to do that, we need to start from the point of a mind that is still and peaceful. So we'll just take a few moments to establish that in meditation. Think any sort of useless or meaningless worries, non-conducive thoughts, I'm just putting those aside.
소설 가르 노지다 보게 내서 간지지나요 노칸 노지가 봐야보 자와이나다 노칸 노지가 거 라야면 봐 뚱바지 마도 저거 주사만도 손바지.
And any of the thoughts, activities, or objects that may be arising in our mind, think that they are ultimately possessing this quality of sky-like emptiness. That means no matter how solid or existent they may seem, if we try to find some sort of pinpointable essence, we will not be able to find that. They are empty of inherent existence.
처음에 노도 잡으셔서 예의나요. 노안노지 거잖이라야만도 손바템보.
Even those objects that seem so problematic, that give rise to so much discursive thought, false thinking, if we try to find some pinpointable essence to them, some existence, we will not be able to find it.
노도 걸어이나요다. 여보 따와이나. 언제가 주사매봐. 시워지려는데 손바지.
And also, the false thought or the discursive projecting thought itself, if we try to find some sort of pinpointable essence to that, we will not be able to find it.
노도 대돈 제 초와 뭐대와 가죠. 템포 지수고 야. 다 대용 저거 주사면도
And those discursive, projecting or false thoughts, they give rise to unpleasant feelings. But those unpleasant feelings, if we were try to find some pinpointable essence to those, we would not be able to find it.
노도 초와 간가 저거 주사매 봐. 통용들 다 유원지 찬용 받아 레레 셔와 줘서
Through contemplating how these various phenomena have no pinpointable inherent existence, the mind is able to relax, and the four elements within me come into a peaceful balance.
유원 류라 때문에 세대였더니 류마대가 뭐 레레 셔와 줘서
Because these four elements are in balance, the wind is in balance. And because the mind rides upon the wind, we're able to touch its fundamental nature, which is neutral equanimity.
근데 세미야 보대. 다 시라 야쇼 쇼르다. 지금 대다 용하지 다 소다요.
Tapping into that fundamental nature of the mind, I will lead it to something positive. I will lead my mind towards the development of wisdom. So we'll pause there. Continue.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And we'll begin. It's like, is the chanting now? Kashila's like, of course it is. What's wrong with you, Ngodrup? Okay, we will begin with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, and we'll also do the short prayer to Guru Rinpoche today, the 7-line prayer.
Tenpa chonden de deshin sheba drachomba yandaba zobe sangye reba dang shaksu denpa dewa sheba jiten chenpa chebu dewe kalo jowa lana meba lado minamgi tenpa sangye chonden de pechawa shakya tuba la chase lo chede kyabsu chi.
So we'll turn to the 7-line prayer in the prayers to Padmasambhava. Guru Pema Siddhi
Benzangara Pema
Siddhi
Siddhi
Mandala.
So ji pegi jo Mandala Kona Yadayami.
Refuge and bodhicitta.
Sanje Chedan Soji Chunam La Jangju Bardu Dani Gyatsu Ji Dagi Chijin Jibe Sonam Ji Jola Benjir Sanje Jobar Sho Sanje Chedan Soji Chunam La Jangju Bardu Dani Gyatsu Ji Dagi Chijin Jibe Sonam Ji Jola benjir sangye joba sho sangye chedam sogi chunam la shangye badu dani kyasu chi dagi chunyen gibe sunam ki jola benjir sangye joba sho.
Oh yeah. 다 도매 샤와 다 도매 샤와세 지보 말에 당연히 용인 유스 강갈 장도도 세시에 되다 보게 좋은 뭐지 그거 알아스.
So we speak about the activities at the beginning, refuge and bodhicitta, but actually on the practical level, refuge and bodhicitta are something that we need to be mindful of, things that we need to recollect in the beginning, the middle, and the end of practice.
어다 용인 유스 총이 되네 조사도 용인하래 어다 세계에 대인을 다 땜보지 되기 세계 알아스.
And when we sort of engage in these practices at the beginning, the middle, and the end, when we engage in the practices of accumulation and purification and so forth, we need to have this idea that
용인 유스 총이 되네라 아니 조사도 용인을 농계에 대인을 써서 얘기하라고 생각.
So the beginning, the middle, and the end. Wake up, Ngodrup. So at the beginning, the middle, and the end, if these are in place, then all of the activities will be effective: accumulation, purification, and so forth.
어다 대폭에 농계에 때 땜보지 잡아라 리드와도 세 끼워지 그거야. 때 당긴 것만 됐다. 대해서 더 잡아라스.
But another important thing too, right? We know that when we want to develop these inner positive qualities, then the body and the mind need to have a peaceful state as a foundation. So that's why we took a moment to develop that at the beginning as well.
다 당기티 다 야보 제가 얘는 간저 다 남의 쇼는 저거야래. 진짜 또 니가 쇼를 다 남의 쇼를 된 조시 이렇게 잘해서 당기는 로테.
And if you can combine sort of that calming meditation practice in the preliminaries with a recollection of emptiness or selflessness, that is especially beneficial. So we sort of touched on that today as well.
다 가제 터도 소소 당겼던 디쇼는 돈에 사세 바지 노이나. 소소 그다 체저이나래. 다니 야슈지 데레세 야래.
세주. Ale kare tombanidi.
야야 남의 쇼를 거냐는 거야.
And also this meditation on selflessness or emptiness, if we engage with this as much as possible, it is also one of the most efficient ways, for example, to clear away obstacles. For example, one of the benefits of meditation upon emptiness is that obstacles to our longevity are cleared away.
리르 뱀바, 셀 뱀바. 어다 지야 체리 모델 뱀바. 강가 진구요 아래서 한번 저기나.
So meditation on emptiness or selflessness is something that is healing for our body and mind. It is something that contributes to our health and longevity. It has many benefits you might not normally think about.
다 던지지에서 다음에 또 돈이 공부한테 농기시 지시에 세비아레스.
Nangi shinje. Right. So shinje tsures tambolamna yagado.
다 시지 때라 니아레스. 나로서 다 보게
Yeah.
세템보 메바서 게텔라 시지 농기시지.
So in the sort of Buddhist deity systems, sorry, there is a deity known as Shinje. So it's not Yamantaka, but he is Yama. So we can think of Shinje or Yama as being kind of like the Lord of Death. And there's an inner Shinje and an outer Shinje.
시시지 데서레서는 간종 너지 텐데야로 지니스 트레니셔노 사워치 적은도 왔어.
Chigi Shinje.
시시지. 다 코레스 야레스.
And Tenje la Chini so.
텐데야로 지냐키 시나 사워치 와선제 아제.
And so if you're wondering what this Lord of Death or Shinje looks like, probably most of you are familiar with the Sipe Korlo, the wheel of existence that shows the 12 links of dependent arising. There's a deity who holds that wheel in his claws. Some say that this is actually Shinje or Yama, the Lord of Death. And there's a lot of actually stories behind this iconography and its meaning. So the story is, right, that at one time
단다 세진야기 지도와
어허, 그래.
시바콜로노라.
Nganso mitse meba soge.
Yeah.
So actually, originally the belief was that it was this Shinje, or the Lord of Death, who had kind of actually come to end our life when our time had run out.
어따 세절 할 레비 강에 침못에 아든지 슈아이자 다때 메바조케텔라 니제 데페 데스 드롭이토네 넘바테네라 어코 메바조케테 슈아르와스.
And so then, as we look again at the deity tradition, it is actually said that in order to defeat Shinje or Yama, this Lord of Death, there arose a being who was known as the Shinje-che, the destroyer or the cutter of the Lord of Death. And this is now, normally we refer to him as Vajrabhairava or Yamantaka.
어따테 가요 어따 알레테 코타테 시케 자레마테 가 할레비션 가체가 돼 말해.
And so also, just to understand that these iconographic things, these are outer representations, right? They are not the most important thing, but just nice to understand those outer representations.
당시에 게야 가르에서 드린 안조 가서 게야 돼다 농기시지 안조를 다 포게 리도 세도 다 맞세도 강가 내바시게 돼 난저 말이 받으래.
And the reason that this was mentioned today was especially because we want to point out the inner Lord of Death. The inner Lord of Death, which is what really causes disturbance to our body, our mind, our health. And this inner Lord of Death ultimately is the ignorance grasping at the self.
어따테 체리 바이나요 때에서 도도기도 왔어. 나세 깨자 모아시겠어 나 좋아한데 나라 모아대 용어도세요.
So science can kind of point at maybe at least the surface level of this truth, because there's been studies done where people who are more self-absorbed, who use the word I or self and are talking about my and mine more frequently, these people are more prone to high blood pressure and other ailments, right? This is a researched thing.
다 농기시지 거의 자꾸 강했적이 돼. 매바조케 달라서래 해서는 다음에 손을 둬야 돼.
So if we want to defeat this inner Yama, this inner Lord of Death, if we understand this as ignorance grasping at the self, then what is the antidote that can defeat that? Selflessness, right? The teachings of selflessness.
어떻든지 지래. 대이사 다 다음에 고야 된 간조 다 맞세 그게 소화 디자이너래. 노도 디자이너래. 그 매바줘야 당연해서는 주듯이 봐지래.
So the meditation on selflessness is really the most effective medicine for those unpleasant feelings that arise connected with those discursive or suspicious thoughts and so forth, really the afflictions in general. So there are also some stories connected with this, which will be shared later, but this was an important point to make right from the beginning. And so some of the stories that Geshe will tell, if there's time, have to do with this Chidak Shinje, so Yama, the Lord of Death, or Shinje, the Lord of Death. Shinje. It is said that actually Shinje, he started out as kind of a very positive being, a good person. And by the end, he became kind of a troublemaker. But Geshe will share some of those stories later. So let us take a moment to refocus our motivation, and to do that, to place the mind in a peaceful and relaxed state. Any unpleasant sensations in the body, any disturbing thoughts in the mind, just gently relax those away and think they dissolve just like a rainbow dissolves in the sky through the power of the sun. And think I want to especially clear, to purify the wind, the breath in my body. So thinking that, take a deep inhalation, Hold it for a moment, and then exhale fully. 3 times.
Lise Shewa, and Ludo Sekanga, Zomaya Pachaso, somebody.
Think the body and mind are peaceful. Through this breath meditation, the body and mind are also purified.
Tatrin Lekachati, that Nungi, Taviri, Sunjiri, Shunji Simbiri Kanga, Ya Sepachita, Lekachi, somebody.
And think that through these meditations and developing these minds, these positive potentials within me, the potential for liberation, the Buddha nature, the potential for arising bodhicitta, these have all been nourished and strengthened within me.
Kaze Yajitu Yanata, Yar Yaranda, Koka Shuchi, Tate Trulato, somebody.
Today I have the opportunity to build on these potentials and make them better and better, to fully bring them out. I will not waste this chance.
Tombo Soso Gil, Tapas Tsuba, Shira Pasutsuba, Shia, Toba Shinitani, the Gelatinitani, Gelatapema, Tempo to
Think my task essentially is to arise the complete stages of practice of the method and wisdom teachings within my own mind stream. And once those have been mixed completely with my mind stream, I will be able to be of real, lasting benefit to others.
Roas Ritu Sultava Hinayan, Dona Tapas Tsuba, Shira Pasutsuba, Mebungita, Qual Codidu, these at Angaro at Timbolekachi.
When I gaze upon the 6 types of sentient beings within cyclic existence or samsara, I can see that what keeps them circling, what keeps them suffering, is their lack of knowledge of the practices of method and wisdom. Therefore, may I actualize these and lead them to an understanding.
Siji Tedagi Chetangarasuna, Nasedeatidas, Suji Jodende Noji, Domano Yutapage, Sujaga Kompachata was
Ultimately, the best way to do that is, for the sake of all sentient beings, to take this self, this I, and use it to actualize the same Buddhahood that the Bhagavan Buddha Shakyamuni achieved, the same Buddhahood that the Venerable Arya Tara achieved. I will do this. Bring forth bodhicitta.
Sosia Bocheva in Matsechili in Ayoshoji Setova, Tuni Toto Patata, Ludo Riba, Jaja Mombola Teneta, Sivundu so much.
Think, if I apply myself, it is totally possible to, in this very lifetime, in this body, in this life, arise bodhicitta. In this body, in this life, realize emptiness. I have all the access to the scriptures and reasonings that I need to be able to arise this. Yeah, help yourself to. Sorry, we have a visitor. Geshe wanted me to offer him coffee as he heard the coffee maker's ready now. So help yourself to a cup of coffee, yeah, and you can leave the book on that table on the side if you want. Okay. So let us begin with the text. So hopefully, right, through these kind of motivations and preliminaries, you see the preciousness of this human life, you see the kind of opportunity that it affords us, and then having appreciated that opportunity, you have some courage, some bravery to really go and practice. And in terms of the actual antidotes to the unsettling minds, the afflictions and so forth, all of the means to be able to rid ourselves of these, everything we need, all of the antidotes has been provided to us by the great teachers of the lineage. It's like they've set out this big banquet of teachings before us, and we just have to get up and enjoy the meal. The incredible clarity that their teachings give in terms of what it is that is unhelpful that we need to set aside, and what it is that is healing that we need to take up and practice. This is something really amazing. So we are now turning to Words of My Perfect Teacher. If you have the Padmakara edition, I believe that we are on page 16.
Yes,
Oh yeah, and so Geshe said that actually maybe some people will be a little bit sad about this, but actually next Sunday will be our last installment of this session of Words of My Perfect Teacher. So what that means is, and Geshe said that he did this to present a variety of essential texts to you, and he tried to do this in a way that would maintain your interest, because sometimes if you do one text and you just go all the way through it, he worries that it will bore people. So we'll do pieces of each text. That's his strategy.
And
so what will happen is we do them in pieces, I think, of about 8 weeks. And so we come to the end of that 8 weeks next week, and we've just covered, some of the text, actually, a small portion of the text. And then we'll move on to something else, but know that we will circle back to this text of Words of My Perfect Teacher and pick up exactly where we left off. And so Geshe said that in this way, we're kind of always continuing, starting, and then circling back. And this is actually how practice should be, right? Because it is something that we have to always come back to. Yeah, so in terms of where we are on page 16, I think near the beginning of page 16, which is talking about the importance of the order of the words in the Dharma and so forth. And also, just to sort of contextualize, we're still in the discussion of the things that one should abandon when one studies, listens, and practices the Dharma. And so the 5 wrong ways of remembering, the 5 wrong ways of remembering are something that can be really harmful to our practice. So we need to know these so that we can abandon them. Tambo di dunzin latsi mizimpa dawa macho di zepa.
대 가운데 고고를 줘요.
어.
야야 로는
저,
저로.
So I'll just read the verse. Maybe some people didn't come last time, so that everyone is on the same page with these 5 wrong ways of remembering. Avoid remembering the words but forgetting the meaning, or remembering the meaning but forgetting the words. Avoid remembering both but with no understanding, remembering them out of order or remembering them incorrectly.
오에 다 저바 된 거죠. 이스트리 저바.
And so now we, Geshe said that out of these 5, we are sort of touching on the 4th principle, which is remembering out of order.
고고 논에 주나 템베 봐도 온가데 녀체 곰바 공기 디스용 가완더.
So if you remember it out of order, you will mix the proper sequence of the teaching. And every time you listen, explain, or meditate, confusion will be multiplied.
고고 논에 저서나 다체 토버 버게 녀레 체 토벌레 찾기 저게야도 레 동보이 저게야지 노소나. 되네요 다 할래비 계속 전도야 되네 용이 하레스.
So for example, if you don't understand the order or the sequence that in which things should be cultivated, and you start cultivating the high-level things before you start working on the foundational things, this can lead to mistakes and mix-ups.
다 간조이나 다 강가슬이나 뭐뭐야래 다 가이나 너네 론촌을 버게 와도 던딜 할래비 체 토버 어지자야 리지 용이 하레 로 토모할 때 뭐마시라 마치네.
So Geshe is just saying that this is something that most of us struggle with, right? We hear about the Tantra, and we immediately get excited about that. And it isn't just the Tantra that we want to practice, but it has to be the highest one, right? So we want the highest Yoga Tantra. But then, because we're so enthusiastic about that, we neglect the common path of the Sutric practices, which are the foundation of all of it.
다 때리나 벨라이노다 첨부 드니 로지요하래 다 때리는 지진의 두지마시기스.
And there's a story of actually how this kind of attitude created a lot of problems in Tibet, and maybe Geshe will share that later as well.
다 숑바도 니지 숑주지 세도 드니 또 니게 초아 메발라 단 니제도 드니 녀라진 할레비 녀라 차고 드니 다 주시는 차고 드니 고요하래.
중셰쇼기. 중셰쇼. So do people, okay, Geshe does these teasers with the stories, and would people like to hear this story? Just raise your hands or give me a thumbs up if you'd like to hear the story. Okay, I see Suzette and I see a few people want to hear it. Okay, let's do it. We'll do the story. And our in-person person wants it as well. So Geshe feels a little, because for people who were at this teaching yesterday on Vajrayāna as well, we talked about how essential and important Tantra is, and this gives a bit of another perspective, so he doesn't want people to feel cheated or tricked, but actually it's a balance between these two views. It's a little bit of a scary story. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. So in Tibet, of course, there were people who kind of really just wanted to jump into tantric practice, and they focused on that, neglecting the common path, and sort of immediately just invested all of their time into practices such as Yamantaka and Vajrayāna, for example. So there was one particular practitioner, and he had gone out of his way to receive all of the empowerments and the teachings related to Vajrabhairava or Yamantaka. And he spent a lot of time in meditating on the deity and in accumulating many, many of the various mantras. But at the same time as he was doing this, he was neglecting rooting that in the teachings on emptiness, and particularly the bodhicitta that is rooted in love and compassion. And it is said that the result of this led to a next life, a future lifetime that he perhaps would not have expected. So he was reborn in a subsequent lifetime as a demon, as quite a harmful demon, but who had an appearance that was very similar to that of the meditational deity of Yamantaka. And he was causing all kinds of problems, and no matter sort of what rituals the local lamas were doing in order to try to pacify him and so forth, they were all unsuccessful. He was very powerful.
king 가르레스는 샤왕가 마트는 거 뭐 보서 차와레 다네 뭐 보셔 차와레 다 다니 때 그런 니반라고 찔라테네 콜레라발로 아카면 좋았어.
It wasn't easy to pacify him because, of course, before that form as a demon, he had been this practitioner who had received many empowerments, developed a lot of concentration, accumulated many mantras and ancillary rituals. And so he had the power of those practices behind him.
아니 거다 거로거로 리와카와이나 gemba치는 가디나 거 gem바투는 용기요 하레스. 제일 군다라.
And so it's said that every night this demon person, he would come to the door of the monastery of his local town.
다 타와칸가 거라자는 군다투는 거 용기도 가르치긴데 다 따간로 그요 하레스. 마레레레레. 거라서 통라고 gem바티.
And the monastery was quite concerned that the demon would cause a disturbance. So they had this rule that every monk would take a shift of an hour or so every night where they would wake up and they would go and just check on the demon and observe him outside the door.
다 노지타에서 뭐 녀레체 데케나고 다 뒤로 잡아 먹어요. 다 비타 보시라 메이지로와. 어느 선도와 이는 콜라카요 말레스.
Ale, lakagyo marisa.
잡아 잡아진다 먹어요 하러와.
Reje.
코로스 거라자는 로가러와.
Yeah.
군다 콜레비깔라. 아니 녀레체게 세이노 콜라카요 말레스 파. 나서 도요 말레스.
야보 거기면 돼.
아직 gem바투는 콘도고투는 레용 거러와. 눈데테.
동제지. 제제.
다 잡아를 거라 자는 군단 로가러와.
Yeah.
다 노지 잡아가 녀레서 기타니 요하러와.
Ale, los.
그래서 선도는 콜라카요 말레스.
Lakagyo marisana.
내가 저토요
Ale,
말레스.
yeah. And so all of these various monks, they would come to keep an eye on the demon, and many of them tried to practice various mantras and so forth, but none of them were able to kind of like overcome or subdue him and stop him from kind of coming.
다 뒤는 로지셔라 메킹와셔라 녀레 마체키가 다 잡아녀 주야 보지요 하레스.
But there was one monk. This particular monk had not really been introduced to the practices of Tantra. He wasn't particularly learned, but he was somebody who was considered very humble and very ethical.
다 콜로조도 녀레오셔라 메 녀로조셔라 메에서 거단 이바도 침보요 할 때는 거를 틈이 있은 로가로 왔어.
And because he lacked the study and practice of some of the other monks, he was actually really afraid to go on this duty to kind of stay by the door where the demon was waiting outside. But as it was the rule of the monastery, he had no choice.
근데 거이나 데들이 다 콜 할레빙 가자오요 말에 권요 주로 왔어. 거를 로조셔라 메이자.
And of course, at the same time, this monk, he realized his own limitations in terms of study and practice. So he wasn't very prideful, and he was a very humble person.
tani dedebeka kollebeka tani takiso no tone ta nije koro tani shawanga matan leka momoche sar ta nije ndri nevashi kisi chensen keniji shuro boch goya swas.
And so as he was kind of approaching the door where the demon was waiting outside, he started to think about this situation, and he thought, poor guy. He put all of this effort into kind of practice, into accumulating all of these mantras and so forth, and the result is that he was reborn as this demon, and he was able to develop like a really powerful compassion for him.
Sata shomba do niji shashu topos gone ta ko niji sha isa ko tagaru nda swas.
Ale, me pasó todo.
No me vas on kolon gota swas.
Ale, los. And through developing this love and compassion, he was actually able to subdue the being somewhat.
tani kongo tani ko shawajin ko sille swas ko sal.
Ale, kogoche sontoda.
Mar shawajin ko tabat nyochu tesa.
Yeah.
niji go jake juarwa ko sille ni la.
Sulene.
Dundet dunle ke jeshi juarwa.
Ine ko jablo la yores, ko nang la yong sontanda.
Molo yuares kadina yung yuarwa.
Las.
ko sille ni la. Ta ngan duno yendar jingala kago mares. 하고서
Yeah.
어떤 이행과 뭐서 아사레 먼저 가르서는 갈로 하고 말was 저러게 니지고는가 그토스.
So the demon, he had actually come and entered into the monastery, and he approached this monk, and he said to him, there are many kind of monks who tried to keep me outside or who tried to subdue me, but because of the power that I had cultivated through my meditations and mantra, I was not really kind of subdued by any of them. But actually, with your mind, with your practice of compassion, I felt that this was something that affected me.
다 던지지 이자 던지게 세노 차고테 키니지 곰발라 때는 기타다 맵다는 매봐서 토요로지 요아레스.
So this is the story that, there was that very difficult kind of demon who had arose from that mistaken tantric practice. But in the end, what was able to subdue him was really this mind of compassion.
다 내서 던지지 요아 이자 간도 하고서 다 인지 면지 왜 서서 당기 주시게서 오쳐서야. 다 간도 레 름바 동복은 요래를 할 레비 So
really sharing this with you, because talking about the proper sequence of the teaching, which if you've got the Padmakara, you see this on that sort of towards the beginning of page 16, and not doing things in the proper sequence, and immediately going to Tantra and exclusively doing that, right? This can lead to a lot of problems. So, of course, not saying that tantric practice is not important, and not saying that it isn't something that we should try to approach and engage with. Of course we should. But we have to understand that its very roots, and that our focus should always remain on bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion, and the wisdom of emptiness. If our tantric practice is not connected with, informed by those principles, then our ritual practice of Tantra is no different from the non-Buddhist types of Tantra. Right, from the Tantra that you find in other Indian spiritual traditions. Yeah. So that's what it says, when we misunderstand the sequence, right, then confusion can be multiplied, and we can apply things incorrectly. This is very important to understand. And connected with this story too is an advice that we'll hear often from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is that if you are afraid of demons or ghosts, the most effective practice that you can do are the meditations on love and compassion. So sometimes, there would be sort of perhaps spirit harms or kind of disturbances in various frightening locations, and His Holiness would be called upon to help, and he would say, there's nothing for me to do other than to meditate on love and compassion in that place. That is the ultimate antidote. So, perhaps these are stories, right? Like we weren't there, but what we can understand is the point that they are helping us focus on, which is that the development of our love and compassion is so crucially important. It is said that the preciousness and power of secret mantra is due to the kindness of sutra. The power of secret mantra is due to the kindness of sutra. So what does that mean practically? That if our practice of Vajrayāna is informed by renunciation or definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, then that practice will be effective. So that was the story. So then we're covering now the fifth of the principle of the wrong ways of remembering them incorrectly. I'm just going to read the whole paragraph together because I think it'll be easier. If you remember incorrectly what has been said, endless wrong ideas will proliferate. This will spoil your mind and debase the teaching. Avoid all these errors and remember everything, the words, the meaning, and the order of the teaching. properly and without any mistake.
단디는 뭐 좋아지고 요르다스. 빼나 뭐야 보냐래 제케는 다 총투 다체 도월래 자서나 리마테 요아레 초투야 요아르바스.
Rimateyasana?
본보모테네 리마.
Listen. Yeah. So it is said, right, when we look at the advanced tantric practitioners like the Mahasiddhas, right, it is seen that for them partaking of alcohol or kind of engaging in intimate relations with women and so forth, all of this is, kind of part of the practice.
다 대야버 르마 동보 가르거요메 니파 가르거요메 라마체나 당과 녀레서 그네 대소 추고 살에 되는 뭔가도 여러 뭐 용기하러.
So one of the reasons that not remembering the sequence of the teachings correctly can be such a problem is we might think, right, that those instructions apply to us. Okay, so I can start drinking, and maybe I can, seek, kind of intimacies outside my relationship and things like that. We could start thinking that applies to us. So because of that, right, because of not cultivating things in the proper sequence, there can be many problems or difficulties that arise. And Lama Tsongkhapa himself, it's quite well known in terms of his biography that actually if he had taken a consort, he could have been enlightened in that very lifetime. But because he wanted to kind of encourage monastics to maintain their ethics, he delayed his enlightenment until the bardo. Some stories explain it like that. So, we begin with the first stages of practice, then go to the middle, and then when we reach the higher stages, then things open up. And we can see some of these different practices are engaged in. So don't build your Vajrayāna practice on sand. In other words, if you're going to build an expensive house, you have to make sure that you put a foundation in it, right? You're not just going to sort of put it on top of the sand without doing anything. So it should be the same way with our practice. That's so important point here. Not so yeah, however long and difficult the teaching may be, do not feel disheartened and wonder if it will ever end. Persevere. Yeah. Sungcho Rinpoche in the So really, what Geshe is saying here is that this is kind of trying to prevent us from the laziness of discouragement, right? Not just like a long teaching, but just thinking, oh, this teaching is too profound or too vast. I'll never be able to understand it, right? So kind of countering that laziness of discouragement. And actually this kind of like sort of lack of confidence in ourselves or the easiness with which we get discouraged, this can be a big obstacle in practice. So the laziness of discouragement is actually considered one of the most dangerous types of laziness because it can be such a hindrance to our study and practice of the teachings. So, no matter how young or how old we are, we should try to see ourselves as a student of the teachings, not getting discouraged and having this determination that if I put some effort, I will be able to come to some understanding and experience. And however short and simple it may be, do not undervalue it as just elementary. To remember both words and meaning perfectly in the right order and with everything properly linked together is indispensable. Similarly, don't go to the other extreme and think, oh, that teaching was really easy and short, so I'm kind of beyond that now, right? Because there could be very important, essential things there that you yourself need to cultivate.
On this one, go pa, Dewa Mano, Sidia Tonjota, Banzaki Payino.
Yeah, so remembering the words and meaning, and also everything properly linked together in the right sequence.
Ota teacher telatapa mevazo Gajutangaro, Kono Doshiava to Kanga Pat, Nikachi.
So what not to do in terms of our motivation and in terms of the way to listen to and study the Dharma, this teaching closes off that section, and now we come to section 2.2. We're on the middle of page 16, what to do or what to take up.
Otan de Chile Gajaga, Andani, Tanesocial, Onekalonare.
So this is explaining what to take up, both in terms of our motivation and also in terms of the activities of our body, speech, and so forth. Yeah, Geshe has a bit of a headache today, he was saying. The conduct to be adopted while listening to the teachings is explained as the 4 metaphors, the 6 transcendent perfections, and other modes of conduct. So the sutra arranged like a tree. So telling Geshe, I think sometimes dehydration can cause the headache. So I'm just encouraging him to drink some water. I was trying to be helpful. Geshe said that even when Ngodrup's trying to be helpful because he's so used to scolding me, he scolds me. Anyway, the sutra arranged like a tree says, "Noble one, you should think of yourself as someone who is sick, of the Dharma as the remedy, of yourself, of your spiritual friend as a skillful doctor, and of diligent practice as the way to recovery." So, of course, these awarenesses, right, are something that are not just important during the motivation. It's an awareness that we should maintain throughout the practice. And so, of course, if we don't maintain this awareness, the danger is that pride can mix with our practice. And when there is pride, then we are not able to integrate the teachings. So this is very important. So if you've defeated karma and the afflictions, then from that perspective, okay, you can be a little proud. Maybe there's something to feel a little bit proud about. But as long as you are still under the control of the afflictions and karma, there's nothing really to be too boastful about. So when it talks about yourself as someone who is sick or the patient, right? Here it's talking about being sick with a very specific kind of disease, the disease of karma and affliction. And so the remedy, and this sutra often translates it as the medicine. The actual medicine, right, is the Dharma, the teachings themselves. So just, like taking the appropriate medicine is able to cure illnesses of our body, then it is these teachings of method and wisdom that are able to heal the illnesses within our mind. Yeah. So actually, the medicine is a good metaphor because we always say that the actual refuge out of these 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the actual refuge is the Dharma itself. And that makes sense in this context too, right? Because it's from the taking of the medicine that one gets better. Yes. So of course, the doctor helps us with suggesting the course of treatment. The nurse helps us to kind of engage with that treatment. But it is the medicine or the treatment itself which actually heals us. In this way, it is the Dharma, which is the actual refuge.
다 대미 대 코로다와 이나 간주 로토데 할래야그네 지주하레스. 샤 템바보레. 샤 루비 다루레. 샤 니마레. 샤 니디 치켄조레 사레. 할레비토 좋아침보.
So the Buddha is the teacher or the propounder of refuge. The Sangha are the friends or the helper along the path. But it is the Dharma itself which is the actual refuge, because ultimately that is what is going to heal us.
다 치게조 샤 니데 세다 자 니데 투닝에서도 투비스테 니에서도 투바데레 니네잖아. 다 텔링 다 간주 다 리메 뭐뭐요. 지치는 다 니워이는 기워로 와스. 예테 다 리메 뭐뭐요 와스.
So, of course, when we talk about the medicine that is going to be able to cure the illness completely so that it never comes into remission, this medicine is the wisdom realizing emptiness. So when we think of the Dharma as the medicine, ultimately this is the wisdom realizing emptiness. And that is a medicine that maybe we can't reach to yet. Geshe apologizes if some of you already have an experience of the wisdom realizing emptiness, but for most of us, right, it's going to be a while before we have full access to that medicine.
다 단다샤 니데 치게조 니네도 롤 말해 되는 이나 이 치게조 레가 체키드 서레서는 소소가 타도 시라가 뇨레 간디 지요나 다 대샤 니데레디가.
So while we might not have actualized the Dharma jewel and have full access to this medicine, we do have access to something that is similar to the Dharma jewel. And that which is similar to the Dharma jewel are our own practices, our own attempts at the practices of method and wisdom.
알라바서 뇨레 간디 지 춘주이나레 대가 템보이나레 간디 지요가 이나 다 땡아로서 다 맹이네 샤 니네 데레스탄다.
Similarly, we can see the three higher trainings in ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Although they might not be the actual kind of actualization of the Dharma jewel, we can see that training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom prevent us from many problems and so forth. And in this way, they are acting as like a provisional medicine, as a provisional Dharma jewel for us.
첸더도 쇼와 샤마가 강냐다 녀소서 강냐라 소바 강냐 뭐뭐 질 샤케 등에네 코레도 왔다.
They protect us from the difficulties in this life. They protect us from accumulating causes of difficulties in future lives. They help us to be able to subdue the three poisons. So ethics, concentration, and wisdom, all three, are very important.
된지성아? 미치라 매진듯이 게이시냐라 멤버 캐빈듯이.
Of your spiritual friend, back to the text, of your spiritual friend as a skillful doctor.
다 게이시네 다 비다 보지요나? 아니 다 너희도 예대 강가 다 예대 여보 초나? 아니 다 로마 예대서 보초소나?
So it is said that actually we have everything we need in the palm of our hand if we are able to meet a spiritual friend, a spiritual teacher who possesses all of the necessary qualities. So also it is said that if one is a student who possesses the appropriate qualities, who is able to meet a teacher who possesses the necessary qualities, then it is as if the practice is in one's hand. So we can see the power of a great spiritual friend to lead even the most fallen of beings. So for example, Angulimala, killed hundreds of beings, and the Buddha was still able to help him subdue his mind and help him achieve liberation. So actually Angulimala also to check teachers carefully, because Angulimala, right, when he first met the teacher before the Buddha, the teacher was actually guiding him in a good direction. But as Angulimala became advanced in his practice, that teacher became jealous, and it was for that reason that the teacher advised him to engage in negative actions such as killing. So, even though from his side, Angulimala actually, if you look at the story from this angle, Angulimala possessed most of the qualities necessary for a good student. But because the teacher did not possess the qualities necessary for a proper teacher, he led Angulimala very astray, caused him a lot of problems.
오 다 된다 든지래. 다는 타마 소진도 되네. 다 맞세들 할래 비타보 야보차야. 다네 할래 안에서 요아레스.
But Angulimala was able to meet the Buddha, he was able to repent and purify, and he was able to come to a very good result, even by the end of that particular lifetime.
오 지말라리 바오 된다 보셔서 거로 빈자도 그렇지. 강에 뭐 텔 타마 거야 보셔서.
Yeah, and Milarepa also, he met a teacher who kind of guided him in a wrong direction to help him achieve a revenge, something really terrible, but by the end he met Marpa, who was able to lead him in a very good direction.
오 다디디디소 디디소아. 오야. 다 내대녀서 나와라 내 녀와 초인듯이 다 야로 로서나 다 타발이야. 도야 그랬더니 수정주 셈바 손주 사람 도야 그냥 지와레스.
And diligent practice is the way to recovery, meaning practice is what is going to lead us to liberation, beyond that to the bodhisattva path, and ultimately to the final result of complete and perfect Buddhahood.
시순바 따르 runye tumami bitene kowa dungaji jasoche 문들 늘 jettu 서동 지부 dunga 선지 내지 나이 내바타위.
We are sick from beginning this time in this immense ocean of suffering that is samsara. We have been tormented by the illness of the three poisons and their fruit, the three kinds of suffering.
다시 다시 들어와서 다 응알리 통보요다네 가이나 지요신 건네바 미세삼도 jettu에서도 리버서 코로프게 코알데요는 야디 와라와스.
So, we are sick from beginning this time. This is very clear. We can see all of the problems that we experience and will continue to experience, as long as we remain within, bound to these abodes of samsara and under the power of the three poisons or the three afflictions.
어떤 원리소아 빼나 리소이 내차 첨보 제답이 내바디 멤버 캐파시티 멤버디 저따라 고지 전에 공부 준비 메뚜데 내래 저희 대화 된다 녀와 따르 멤버 캐파다가 전혀도 되면라미 저수기까지 저 동비 치지 메뚜 레녀 등화제 내래 저와 셰기바이.
When people are seriously ill, they go to consult a good doctor. They follow the doctor's advice, take whatever medicine he prescribes, and do all they can to overcome the disease and get well. In the same way, you should cure yourself of the diseases of karma, negative emotions, and suffering by following the prescriptions of that experienced doctor, the authentic teacher, and by taking the medicine of the Dharma.
라마 때죠 라미까지 맞잖아 maybe go 마냐나 maybe never 펜 두타 매바돈다.
Following a teacher without doing what they say, it's actually not what he says. I just want, for those concerned about gender stuff, it actually, the gender pronoun in Tibetan is not he, it's gender neutral. So we can say following a teacher without doing what they say is like disobeying your doctor, which leaves them no chance of treating your illness.
다 된다 라와서도 이거 다 그렇게 라미 깔아 간디 지어봐이네 다 대저게 내성이네 바시레 되어래 소소라.
So you have to check to see if the advice that the Lama is giving is in accordance with the three higher trainings in ethics, concentration, or wisdom. But if what he or she says is in accordance with ethics, concentration, and wisdom, then really it's your responsibility to do your best to take that up and practice that.
다리 세모처와 배시에 사서 와서 다이온라마티가 골로로박 세나마디 다 코로박 무게 샤와트 리우쇼르다 대치kel레가 지가 대인지면 얘가 말라마 대차와이나 얘가 말해서 다 로르도 가와이나 요와스.
So, however, that story that Geshe spoke about Angulimala, he shared that for a reason, because if one observes carefully the advice of the Lama and thinks about it, and that advice is actually leading one to non-virtue, leading one in an unwholesome direction, even if you made the decision to take that Lama as your guru, you are not kind of indentured to have to follow that advice. You absolutely can choose not to follow that advice.
어다 되면 어때 메타 되지 하고 가래. 저도 라미까지 저서 피터 버츠고 요리 되는 된다. 여기 코로레 동보아지나. 그요 봐. 세자 전부 기본선도선 디와스.
So really, and one can find this in the stages of the path in the Lamrim teachings, but this is something really important. Gonda karekuyangbo lamare ngansore.
세시워서 라마탈 레 동보가 로마이나요.
So even if we are somebody who is a beginner in the Dharma, our practice of And it's not like this is sometimes translated as guru devotion, but Shenyan Tensul really means the way to rely on the spiritual friend, right? Because it's in like a sutra context here. The way to rely on a spiritual friend. There's a way to do this, Geshe said, in a way that is open-minded and not nervous, right? With a broad mind, able to practice relating to the teacher.
시에바 강가 니에가레 어달라 전에 강가 더가레 잘 거로 윤운도 대용고 알아서 전설.
Yes.
아까서 다때 거로 제 도빈요래 요는 거 내서 지레마도 내 돈머니 말했다.
So for us as beginners, we always want to evaluate the advice and our application of it. You will find some scriptures that are saying whatever the Lama says, surrender and just do it. That ain't for us. That's for high-level practitioners. So Geshe said he apologizes. Some of you may be high-level, but for most of us, right, that's not the level that we're practicing at. So we practice it with this beginner advice, as Geshe advised.
단 리피드이나 가딩이나 지게기께라 침보지 그 저도도 알아서 남아질. 소라가서라. 시에바 강가 니에가 가지고 마시야.
Yeah. And also, right, the lamas themselves have a responsibility, and often we don't hear that side of things. But Geshe said, he remembers, he can't remember if it at that time he was hearing this when he was at Sera or when he was visiting Drepung. But one of the important teachers was kind of scolding the teaching lamas, saying, if you're going to tell your students how important guru devotion is and that they should do what you say, make sure that what you say is not nonsense. Right? So that's also really important. And if you're supposed to see the actions of what the teacher does as pure, then don't do shameful things and make it easier on your students. That was the other piece of advice. So Geshe says, there is responsibility on the other side, so it's good to understand that as well.
Yeah.
So really, we want to take this advice, but also contextualize it in a way that it allows us to practice for the long haul, right? Not getting too extreme. Yeah. So we'll stop here, but I'll read out this last sentence to where Geshe stopped. So I'll just give Geshe's gloss first. So Geshe said, taking the medicine that our teacher provides us, which we have checked, right? That is in accordance with the Dharma, really taking that medicine of the 3 higher trainings. Otherwise, just listening to the teaching, we become like this. Not taking the medicine of the Dharma, that is to say, not putting it into practice, is like having innumerable medications and prescriptions beside your bed, but never touching them. Your disease will never be cured. And because we want to be able to have a long and healthy life, in order to be able to practice the Dharma, we will turn again to the Amitayus Sutra. And I believe that, so I'm using Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche's translation. We are on page 7 in that translation, if you have the text with you. Geshe. Nganso di shar yang de tse sangye chedra guju. Yeah. Di ngöla eh. Oh, okay. Shoku di yöna mena di ham. Oh no. Na di dada jati so so. Oh yes. Sorry. Di gangla eh. Yeah. Okay, so Geshe, sorry, he wants to start one verse before, so we're at the bottom of page 6. Nga sungdi ngöla rwa. Re nganso di jotsa rege. Di su china dang su jendag china deni tsenden so jadang je deni lo gyatra chi mangru jogri di jotsa.
Tendotsa songas di jukwete se shimata.
Reje. Deni nganso gosu ya shar di.
Shate mares.
Ale.
Di jukwete deni shipini josa.
Ale, okay. Nganso, oh right, poa ginetsu dabu chikajre tua. Okay, yes, so, okay. So we are at the bottom of page 6, halfway through the final paragraph.
단데 이게 좋아도 이게 들리서 이나 근데 시비네 저 대지셔봐 책봐도 매봐 뒤 손지지 신지 대지 거에 대봐도 매봐라서 봐 시완저로.
So just recapping where we ended last time, Manjushri, the lifespan of anyone who writes, lets others write, has made into scripture, keeps at home and reads the 108 names of the Tathagatas, will be increased 100 years from the end of their life.
다 가정가 맛이 차야 돼 첸들 그게 체를 바치도 들리려 봐 이나요. 저 바치 매니라 세진 보대 그래. 단데 시와 시마이나요. 하고 살아와. 오다시야 보도 들리신도 그래.
So this could be understood from two perspectives, that if there is not a serious obstacle, one is able to extend the lifetime that you're in right now. So this life that we are in right now by 100 years. Failing that, one can also understand that it is able to add on to a lifespan of 100 years to a subsequent lifetime. And in terms of the benefits of this practice of the Amitayus Sutra, these were spoken by the Buddha himself. Yeah, 하고서.
good was.
제.
그거 내서 대라 수지 연도 알지가 수지 쪼된 데가 좀 받다가로래 셈. 그래서 다전다로.
So Geshe is not going to read out all of the sutra because there's a lot of repetition. Also, the dharani appears many, many, many times, but he wants to give you the essence of, in my translation, what's happening from pages 7, 8, and 9. So what happens is we see various numbers talking about Buddha's teaching this sutra container unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom. So on page 7, starting with that first paragraph, that's for the eastern direction. Then we go to the south, to the west, to the north, to the 4 intermediate directions. And then when you come to the bottom of page 9, you come to above, below, and the central direction. And so, gonda sangye jendagden so.
Yeah, they should shall you be sonji ganga. Knowledge be sonji gangi tagaru.
So what this is, what these paragraphs are doing is it's the Buddhas in that sort of quadrant of the universe who are saying it is exactly as the Buddha has spoken in this Amitayus Sutra. So it's like a certification or a confirmation. So an easy way to understand this is all of the Buddhas of the universes in all 10 directions express that it is thus, it is thus, it is exactly as the Buddha has spoken. So this helps us think, maybe some people don't have full confidence in Shakyamuni Buddha. So it's like all of the other Buddhas of all of these other universes are saying it's not just Shakyamuni that is saying this, we are also confirming that this is true and well. Okay, Shogun Abadi Tama. Oh yeah, yang se kawa, kangshi se dan. Ale los. Okay. Al 9. Okay, loso. Yep, hagoso. And so then, as one continues in the sutra, then starting from not where the dharani appears, but the shorter verses of explanation from the first one on page 10 and so forth, this is another section of the sutra which is extensively expressing the benefits of the Amitayus Sutra.
대 세제 냐와동 쇼소가 시에네도 시진지데 노도용 셔와 먼저로 노도용 먹고바 셔와 먼저데 공도르시 셔와 통제도 셔와 전반저로.
So wonderful benefits expressed here. I'll read these two paragraphs without the dharani in the middle. The life of anyone who writes or lets others write the sutra of container of unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom will be enhanced, and they will live another 100 years. Anyone who writes or lets others write this sutra container unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom will never get reborn as hell beings in the place of animals or in the realm of yama. They will never get reborn in the state of no freedom. Wherever these beings are born, they will remember all their past births. So this is a really powerful statement here, because if one is able to have faith in this sutra and recite it, it can cut off the doors to the lower realms of the animals, the hell beings, and so forth. And so also one will never get reborn in the state of no freedom. So even if born as a human being, one will not be born in a place where one does not have access to the freedoms and richnesses of a precious human life. And also one will have the power of memory. The sutra goes on to explain that one will have the power of memory to remember all of the positive things that one cultivated in previous lifetimes. And on page 11, another benefit. Writing or letting others write this sutra container unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom is like letting the person write the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. Yeah. So this means that if you recite the sutra, it's the equivalent to, if you write down the sutra, it's the equivalent to writing down all of the other teachings. And this number of 84,000 can be broadly understood in that the teachings of the Buddha are antidotes to 84,000 afflicted or incorrect states of mind. Yeah.
Maripa, Tomiguri, Duranistaji. There's a Chanyo, Duranistaji, Mandawa.
Chanyongsana?
No, Dusum.
Ale, loso. Yeah, so 84,000, Geshe is dividing this because we said that these are 84,000 teachings in terms of 84,000 antidotes to the corresponding afflicted types of mind. So if we break down this number of 84,000, we can say that 21,000 of this 84 is related to anger specifically. 21,000 of these 84,000 is related to anger specifically. So we did attachment, we did anger. 21,000 is related to ignorance specifically. And so that brings us to 63,000. And then the 21,000 are related to a combination of attachment, anger, and ignorance. And that brings us to 84,000. And so that's the common understanding of this number of 84,000, and that the various sutras and discourses of the Buddha can be considered as amongst those collections of antidotes. So Geshe just a caveat that that's one way of explaining this number of 84,000, and he can't recollect, but he's pretty sure there are other ways of explaining this number as well. So we can understand broadly that the teachings of the Buddha, whether we speak about the three poisons separately, they can completely overcome them. Whether we talk about mental states that are from some combination of the three poisons, they can overcome them. In other words, the proclamations of the Buddha leave the afflictions, no place to arise.
다 던지지랜도 다 던지더니 다 내서 배에 뭐 도요 아이사더니 다 가빈은 소소소 내res.
So understanding the benefits of this profound sutra, then with a joyful mind reciting it at home from time to time. So thank you. That concludes everything that Geshe wanted to share today. So we will do a brief dedication. After the dedication, if folks need to get on with your day, please feel free. But if you'd like to stay for question and answer, you are most welcome.
Changju Zenju Rinpoche Maje Banam Jijur Chi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gonda Bewa Shu Toni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Jijur Chi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gonda Bewa Shu Jambe Pao Jita Kyamba Dam Kundu Zambo Deyon Dejinte Gewa Dungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Tamche Rabdungo Duzun Shebe Gewa Tamche Gi Ngowa Ngona Chotu Ngaba De Dagi Gewe Tsawa De Gengyon Zambo Choji Rada Ngowa Ye.
Through the power of these merits, may all the wars, famines, various disturbances and conflicts in the world be completely pacified. And in this way, may the mind, the suffering of beings be eased. May they be happy. Through the power of these merits, all 6 types of beings within samsara definitely have the potential, the seeds of love and compassion within them. Therefore, through these merits, may they be able to bring forth this love and compassion. So we'll pause there. I'm just going to turn the volume up just to make sure we can hear your questions. Just give me a moment. Sorry. Please go ahead. So remember, Geshe said also that the true cause of happiness, which is compassion, that the Buddha Bhagavan, he first arose this while in the hell realm due to witnessing the terrible suffering that one of his companions was undergoing. Sorry, my clothes are falling apart now. All right. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. So often one thing when we speak about the lower realms, in particular the hell realms, it is said that generally one is has to stay there until the karma is exhausted for one to remain there. But actually in this case, through the power of the being that became the Buddha, through the power of the compassion that he brought forth, seeing his companion tormented, he was immediately able to exit the hell realm. So that rebirth that happened right after the rebirth of hell, the being who became the Buddha, he was actually reborn in a human form. His father was a potter, somebody who made different kinds of pots.
me shajatawa chimbo se me.
So there was another Buddha at that time, not the Buddha that we think of as Shakyamuni, but his name was similar. He was known as Maha Shakyamuni, or Great Shakyamuni. But this was a different Buddha of that time period.
Tangamala pacha ya boyo ni jiu ya bo ko bachi ya ita tandigi jeshin ga wo chan na soji to tanya wale be kala. Koros zamazo ke zami phoba no.
Yeah.
Tapachi lo ne tapa phoba ko sonji chimbo chajatawa chimbo le pyu ya.
So because he was the son of the potter at a very young age, and because of the power of his compassion, he had faith in this Buddha Maha Shakyamuni, and he when Maha Shakyamuni was coming to their vicinity, he was able to fill one of these bowls with I think some kind of soup and offer this to that being.
다 대디 빨 때 피닐 김면로 가르자 바래. 저러 그 매도 지바. 저러 그 끝에 체주도 지바. 나 방고 바나 영화쇼. 오사 디멜론도 내는 좀 돼야 돼 샤샤샤도 왔어요.
And at the time he made that offering to Maha Shakyamuni, he said, through the merits of this offering, may I be born under the same name, with the same body, with the same positive deeds that you manifest. And in fact, the results of that prayer was that he manifested as Shakyamuni in this world. So there's actually, and one of the words of this prayer is something that is often recited in the assembly at the monastery. So that's the essence of the prayer. It went a bit fast for me to translate exactly, but basically it's praying to be reborn with exactly the same name, the same body, the same features, the same capacity to help as that Buddha. So it's wonderful when we look at these stories in the scriptures, because it shows the Buddha not just from that point of view as a completely enlightened being, but also from the point of view that he was a beginner just like us. So finish the story. So if there are questions, please go right ahead. Yeah, so we'll do an in-person question first, since the people at home seem a bit quiet. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yep. So I just heard Geshe said like the sutra pass and the tantra pass are both important, like to start with at the same time. So, but I just wonder, like, when is the suitable time for a person to receive the highest yoga tantra teaching and start practicing? Like, is there a set point, like to some point you can just start, but like before that you shouldn't even read or touch on that teaching?
Yeah. So did people hear the question? People at home, did you hear the question? So, okay, I'll just repeat, I think, the essence of the question.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically it's a question about, because Geshe talked about the importance of, not neglecting sutra and also practicing both a sutra and tantra together, that was very important. So the question was, for somebody approaching these teachings, is there a set point where it's appropriate that they should approach tantra, in particular, highest yoga tantra? And when would that be? And then, of course, they until they had reached that point, they would not be engaging with it. Dene ganso di gen di do da ngak niga nyamlen che la halepe ke chambores ane di mena dene ganso ngak gi netsu di yabo chaya yomares ine soso yabotana dene ngak chirtan ngak so lamegi gyu di akandes go tsugures di go tsugsachi lab tugirebes.
Me condition go to gares, then go to be got that more on to gares.
Yeah, sorry, koyang wang kadu sugures da kadi go tsugures da washirwa.
Me tating on the call me patin bodo, Takorotewa Chimbodo, so at minute and boyona. And it was a
So generally, if we speak from just the perspective of when can one receive an empowerment into these teachings, it can be from the time where one has faith, confidence, and respect for the teachings of Tantra. So that's one facet there. And that means not just a passing fascination, but an unwavering faith in the importance of the Tantric teachings. This is something that's very important.
제체치를 라면 공원시와라 라면 그다음 ngwa dombato bala shunjusembe dombato kare shunjusembe dombato bala da 그렇게 가 차소도 릴라보도 수도 가세이나 수도 요마르도 뭐네 이나에 다 된다 그게 뭔지 대바치 그 하래스.
And so this unchanging faith is very important, and also understanding that as one embarks on the practice of highest yoga tantra, when one receives the empowerment, the abhisheka into highest yoga tantra, one is required to take and maintain the bodhisattva vows, right? Because one takes the tantric vows, and to receive those, you need to first receive the bodhisattva vows. So some familiarization and training in the practices of the bodhisattva and maintaining those vows is very important. Of course, we can't maybe maintain all of those perfectly from the beginning, but some familiarity is important.
다 내서 다 망가와셔도 같이 머리 때는 논소로도 주주들이도 사례 사기적에서 그만해.
Yes.
Yeah.
So also the bodhisattva vows, especially when we include the branch vows, they're very, very numerous, and to get like super hyper nervous about it and think, oh, I didn't keep them perfectly, I failed. I mean, that's not the mentality that we want to have, because that's not good either. But the overarching principles of the bodhisattva vows, and also avoiding the complete downfalls and so forth. This is important. So an understanding of those bodhisattva vows connected with that motivation of bodhicitta, one can bring that forth, and one can take the empowerment, and slowly one will improve in the practice. So an unchanging or unwavering faith before receiving empowerment and embarking, in particular with highest yoga tantra, is very important, because what happens is if one hasn't studied enough to have that stable and unwavering faith, one might pick up the practice of tantra because one fancies it, and later just leave it aside. And of course, when one does that, it creates some pretty serious obstacles.
Yeah.
So any questions from folks at home?
Yeah. Hey, Dekili, Margaret, I'm not sure who went first, but please go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. So coming back to the 5 wrong ways of remembering.
Yeah.
I was able to get the first, words with no meaning with no words, no understanding of either. Remembering out of order. What was the 5th?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. I'll read you the verse again, Dekili. So this verse is on page 15. Avoid remembering the words but forgetting the meaning, that's 1. Remembering the meaning but forgetting the words, that's 2. Remembering both but no understanding, that's 3. Remembering them out of order, that's number 4. Remembering them incorrectly is number 5. Remembering them incorrectly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Margaret, you're on.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi. I'm just sort of confused in a sense, because you said maybe if you can clarify it so I can understand it more. You said, okay, we take the bodhisattva vows where it says no intake of alcohol.
No, that's not the bodhisattva vows, Margaret. Those are the praktimoksha vows.
Okay,
there's nothing about alcohol vows in the bodhisattva vows.
Okay, my bad. Okay.
Yeah. Those there are vows against alcohol. You're absolutely right, but those are the vows of individual liberation, or pratimoksha vows.
Okay, so those are the pratimoksha vows.
Yeah.
And also sexual misconduct. That's part, not of the bodhisattva vows. That's part of the 8
pratimoksha vows. Yeah. Vows of individual liberation as well. Yeah.
But then you say the Mahasiddhas, they could practice all that? That's what I don't understand.
Yes. No, I got your question.
Because that to me is the contradiction of the vows, right? So yes. I don't understand that at all.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And that's what the Jangchub Sempe Dompa Dinso Gogires, right? Jangchub Sempe Dompa Yapo Chailangan so Tarpe Dompa Gogires, then Soso Tarpa Kapulangan so Loyem Dang Chang Pangores Dang Dinso Chat Sangwayores, in a Druptop Dinso Konso Sangyum Nyaria Dang Chang Tung Chogires, di Sutram Dang Gawe and Sang Drebu Kandis Yaboyong Tugires, di Kogimentu Sa.
미미미 다야 체 놀래 체 토월에 자서 오 고르지세요 아레스 테마도 달래 돈비가 아니라 소자타비 담바 존재세비 담발레발라 이니 민지 소타가 담바 그말에 그래서나
Yeah. So Geshe said that when we talk about the Mahasiddhas, these are already beings of great realization. So this is only relevant once you have realization, right? It's not conduct that's relevant to us, right? So just think of it that way. And then also in terms of the bodhisattva vows and the pratimoksha, or the vows of individual liberation, where they intersect, you can actually take the bodhisattva vows, but not take any, or only take some, or take all of the pratimoksha vows. So taking the bodhisattva vows does not depend upon maintaining the pratimoksha vows. So you could still drink, for example, but also take the bodhisattva vows and try to maintain them.
페나 나로소가 두위산을 신로그로 왔어 샤마자가 두위산을 koppoji 야른도고 야래
So the example that's given about the great Mahasiddhas and why we shouldn't try to imitate them is a peacock is able to eat poisonous plants and his feathers become more and more beautiful. But if other birds eat those plants, they might get sick and even die. So that's the example that's often given.
다 뜻도 되죠 덤보 갈은 안조 레 덤보도 안조도 집에 갈은 거기서 집하러 왔어 그래도 야래
And also understand that those Mahasiddhas, they didn't start out as Mahasiddhas, right? They started out as ordinary practitioners just like us. And being able to develop those realizations depended upon them maintaining those trainings and ethics just like us.
다 쪼짜도 류도 강가를 보겠다 롱침부터 하잖아 드네 된다녀라 야말 제 도르게 잘했어
But it's through realizations, tantric realizations, and also being able to perfectly control the winds and the drops that they were able to go to these level of practices that we hinted at here. But that's something, you know, that is a really high level of realization.
아고송 다 빼나 되는 데는 왔어 빼나 아주 나지 대초가 저체 나보
Yeah.
저체 나보 고자 코체토 레타니 탄다 리마테사 그티세나고 레송 바치네라 오라라마테사 실라바레스
Loso. Hakusum.
오라마테는 같은 티세 레송 슬라마티가 저로 시든 거를 샤요도 로마강가 살마 빠슈스
So to illustrate what a high level of realization is necessary for these unconventional forms of conduct, there is a, and if I say this name in the Sanskrit incorrectly, someone please correct me. It's Nagpopa, so it's Krishna Charya. Is that right? The Krishna Charya Mahasiddha, this is one of the streams of the Chakra Sambhara practice. So Mahasiddha Krishna Charya, he was practicing diligently and came to a level where he thought, okay, I should engage in intimate relations and I should take a consort. He approached his guru and he said, I think I've reached this point in my practice, so I'm ready to do this practice. The guru said to him, if you can point at that tree and make all of the leaves fall off the tree, and then point at that tree again and make all the leaves reattach themselves to the branches, I'll accept for you to do this practice. And Krishnacharya, he had some level of siddhi, so he meditated and was able to manifest a wind through which all of the leaves fell off the tree. But he wasn't sufficiently developed to be able to, through the power of his meditation, reattach all of those leaves to the branches of that tree. So his master said, no, not for you. Go back and meditate. So he was told to go back and continue with his practice. So there are many such stories like that, Margaret, which illustrate the importance of this principle. But what we can understand is that these sort of allowances for the more unconventional types of conduct, that is once one has reached an extremely high level of realization that that conduct will not harm oneself and also that the conduct will not harm another. So the many things actually, it's an important point and we'll discuss more about it in the future for sure. But just for those of you who are considering taking these vows as the initial stages of training, like for lay people, we talk about the Genyen and the Genyenma, so the Upasaka and the Upasika, right? The laywoman and the layman. These vows of the laywoman and the layman, they're 5 in number. They include avoiding intoxicants and so forth. You don't need to take any of them or all of them to take the bodhisattva vows. Although it is fantastic to take these lay person's vows, it is not a prerequisite for receiving the bodhisattva vows. So you could take the bodhisattva vows initially and take those later and whatnot. So, of course, maintaining the ethical precepts of the upasaka and upasika is the very best foundation for training in the bodhisattva precepts. It's the best foundation, but it is not a requirement for training in the bodhisattva precepts. Yeah. So actually, and some people might disagree with this, because in one of the texts that we're going to be looking at shortly, Lamp of the Path, it seems to indicate that the training in the pratimoksha is a requirement for engaging in the bodhisattva vows. But if you look at later commentaries by the same author, he explains that it's not a requirement in the absolute sense. It's more like a best case scenario. A best case foundation is the pratimoksha vows for later training in the bodhisattva precepts. So it says those keeping the various of the 7 types of pratimoksha vows have the fortune to train in the bodhisattva vows. So if we take that literally, something to think about here, Geshe just quoting from that text. But in other texts by the author, and more explicitly in texts by greatly realized beings such as Jetsunpa and so forth, it says that this is a best case scenario, but this is not required for training in the bodhisattva precepts. So hopefully that answered Margaret's question. Are there any other questions?
There's one in the chat.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Thank you. I've forgotten. So the question about the long life practice, is it possible to just recite the mantra that's there for practice?
Yes, you can recite just the mantra. Actually, strictly speaking, this is a dharani. So yes, you can recite only the dharani. The dharani is actually the essence of the sutra in a way. So yes, you can do that. With great faith, and also if you also combine the recitation of that dharani with the visualization of Amitayus, for example, and receiving the lights and nectars, this is very beneficial.
There's another question about what is the Lamp on the Path text we'll be looking at next?
Jangjum lamdrun di kawaneres karichene kechemboresa. So the Lamp of the Path is a text by the great Bengali master Atisha, and it contains the essence of all of the teachings kind of systematized into the layers of practice. Like everything is there, so it's very important. So one of the reasons that Atisha was so important is because at the time there were many sort of disparate instructions on the bodhisattva path. So Atisha traveled and received all of these instructions and sort of combined them into one systematized stream of practice. So for that reason as well, the text is very important. Yeah, and so in particular, like for one set of instructions, right, the bodhicitta instructions, it is said that Atisha had to travel to Indonesia to meet his teacher Sudvarnadvipi, Sir Lingpa, and it was, Geshe can't remember if it was 9 months or 12 months of a very dangerous ocean voyage where various sea monsters and so forth were encountered. So really he risked his life to be able to receive all the teachings he needed to systematize. So receiving all of these essential instructions and then kind of systemizing them into a cohesive whole that folks like us could really kind of apply and put into practice. Yeah, and when an assembly of the various great panditas, the great scholars of India at that time, read Atisha's instruction lamp on the path, they were all kind of really amazed and moved by it. And so they said, Atisha, you know, his leaving us to go to Tibet, this really came to something. Perhaps if he were in India, he could not have composed such a profound text as this. All right. So if there's no questions, everybody, we are coming sort of to the end of our time. Is there another?
Yeah, I've got a question from that answer.
Yeah.
At the end of the Guru Puja, we go through the stages of the path. It's part of the Guru Puja. And there are some final verses that move into the Tantra as well. So when Atisha came back and created that path, did he also include those stages, or was it all sutra?
Oh, okay, good question. Yeah, nganso the George Gikola younger chuachi lebson per nganso lama chupa lamrim suldeb nanglula lamrim gi mengak chatsama gyune drogire duas tene tama gu kerim dang zogrim korla shloka kashe redua George Atisha ko lamdrin sodu ane netsu chidu ko chatsangwa do chikpo dapo gi lamrim drotsares ko yang ngaki netsu kashe chitsaresa. Oh, jangchu lamdrin gi nangla ingo mareta chirtangti. George Atisha. So Geshe, he said that he's not completely sure, so let us know if you see otherwise, but he thinks that Atisha, at least what's left of his teachings, is really focused on sutra, as far as he knows. He's not absolutely sure though, so he will check this for you, but off the top of his head, he thinks it was just sutra.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
All
right, so since there seems to be no more questions, we will end it there. Everyone enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Geshe Dade.
Thank you.